So what do you do when you're in a situation where most of your lead characters are supervillains already? It's funny because where do you get the antagonists from? Since most of them are already humans and metahuman, you're left with no other option. You need to introduce an inhuman character. So right from the beginning, the movie does not waste any time in setting the premise. It's just straight introduction, outright flat screenplay in introducing everyone. So it's very similar to what the trailer did. You know what the premise is, and it's just a bit more detailed than how the trailer was. So I was particularly thrilled to see how they're going to introduce each of these characters and how they're going to relate them and get them into the story and all that. So I must say that there are only two characters that literally save this movie. So one is Deadshot and the other is Harley Quinn. So these two, I think if it wasn't for them, I don't know how this movie would have fared or how I would have felt about this movie either. Especially the introduction of Deadshot. When I saw that whole sequence, I really thought I'm going to be blown away by the movie, because I think that was really well done. Followed by the introduction of Harley Quinn. But then somewhere after that, I think the movie starts to fall apart. It doesn't grip too much of obvious and predictable things. Yes, the whole plot is going to be predictable. They are going to save the world and they're on a suicide mission. But then you do expect freshness in the script, something that surprises you or you're kind of taken aback, either by the way the shot was designed, or either by some gimmick or some trick or something. One pleasant thing was the cameo of Batman. So all of us got energized. So you literally feel like you're being dragged into a quicksand of technology and CGI and so much of unhuman and unearthly stuff happening on screen. And then the humor and the comedies from characters like Deadshot and Harley Quinn literally refreshes you and gets you back to life, and you might feel like, okay, I think this movie is quite entertaining at certain places. I also feel the movie had emotions well written in certain places, particularly the sentiments and emotions between Deadshot and his daughter. I think it was really well shot. And Will Smith, oh my god, this guy's eyes and his delivery of speech is just so effective, it would move anyone. I mean, literally in certain scenes, I wouldn't even want him to talk. His eyes are so expressive, you could feel the pain right away. Now, you remember I said the cameo of Batman was very pleasant, because I felt initially they set up a good plot. They kind of emphasized on the value system of Superman as well. They said although he's, a superhuman or an alien, it worked out for Earth because he shared the same values as we did. And that's how the movie starts off, and they're trying to prep themselves against any such superhuman attack who's against the human race. So that's how this whole Suicide Squad is built. Now what happens is that they do something very similar, but they don't say it outright, but then they show how important Batman is. So even when the police or the cop can't do enough to catch certain, the baddies, I think they go out to Batman. It was unsaid, but then I think that's what I could perceive, and I really like that from this movie. But at the same time, now that the cops rely on Batman for getting these baddies into prison, I really wonder where he was when, the whole world was tearing apart. I think one of the main problems with the movie is that there are too many characters introduced at one go. When you look at certain, multi-character movies, there would be certain characters that are already doing rounds in the movie industry. You might add a few characters with every movie, which are from the comics. So it's fairly subtle for someone to perceive so many characters. But when it comes to Suicide Squad, I think a lot of characters, are being introduced for the first time, and then, people cannot get smothered, and, they're not able to relate to the characters so much. They just look at them as, baddies, but not particular to what their background is, what unique powers they have, what is their value system. All these are very important. I think for anyone, whether you're a good guy or a bad guy, your value system has to be very strong, and any audience should be able to relate to that. So I couldn't, I was very confused when I was looking at the movie, especially this character called, Enchantress. I literally loved the character in the initial phase when the character was introduced, until she went out of control. I literally loved that character, and I loved the way they played it as well, the way she was discovered and so on. But then after that, there was no character to it. I mean, that I was like, I don't want CGI. I just want her character, how badass she is, right? So I think that was another bummer. Now, yes, coming to one of the most anticipated characters, Joker. Now, it is completely unfair if you're going to compare this Joker to Nolan's Joker. You shouldn't be doing that because this is a more chaotic, insane, madness filled Joker. He's someone who's very destructive. He doesn't look like someone who schemes a lot, who plays with the minds of people. He's not that. He's just some guy who's totally mad. He's chaotic. He's just too spontaneous. So I think that's something different. So although his character comes, is sprinkled throughout the plot again, I looked at his character as a cameo role rather than him being part of the plot in this particular movie. So I think they just needed him to come here and there so that we can relate him to the DC cinematic universe and also a support system for Harley Quinn. So that's how I looked at this character. So we all know that there is a Batman movie coming with the Joker playing the main antagonist role. So I'm looking forward to that. Now coming to how Jared Leto played this, I think the approach was the whole world knew that Heath Ledger had raised bars with his performance in Nolan's Joker. But Leto shouldn't have been bothered about that at all. I mean, you don't play a character, thinking that you need to outperform someone or outbeat the performance of someone else. I think you need to give more to what the script demands rather than trying to be the best, So it cannot look like he was overperforming every time on screen to me, and it kind of felt a little too much. So now when you look at it, so particularly I knew that he has metal teeth. I just didn't want to see it in every scene. So obviously, I mean, why would he have to open his mouth so wide and then show his teeth off every time? That kind of, it just felt, I mean, certain things like that, it just felt too much of, performance. And another thing I fail to understand is, yes, we all know this is a, movie with all superhuman characters and all metahuman characters and so on. So they're just going to be some superpowers being thrown on screen. Why does it always have to be this way where if you have an antagonist role, he's trying to, build a machine that's destroying the world and the lights, coming, shooting up to the sky from nowhere and, they're prepping up for the end. It's just too monotonous now. We've seen enough movies like that. I think the way people have to destroy world should be different, at least in the movies to come by. Because that particular scene, I'm sure we saw something very similar with Doomsday in Batman vs Superman. So I just feel it was too monotonous and it was just too much of CGI. I just couldn't take it. So in whole, how did I feel about Suicide Squad? Yes, there are some parts of the movie that I really loved. For example, the comedies, the emotions, the introduction scenes, all that was great. But then there are some part of the movie that you really feel let down. So let's just say when you watch this movie, it's very visible and obvious that they gave so much importance to technology, but then they completely lacked in finding the soul of the movie. So yes, I shall meet you again with another movie. Until then, this is Uday Senan.